Hi everyone, it's Lisa Mears here, and I'm back today to share with you the Stamps of Life October card kit and the stamp and die of the month for October. In this video, you'll see an unboxing of the club items and my design process for 10 cards that I made with the card kit. Before I get started, I want to thank all of you for the sweet comments you left on my last Stamps of Life video from last month. I do read all of your comments, so thank you. Also, to those of you who joined a Stamps of Life club using my affiliate link, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm now a Stamps of Life club affiliate, so if you decide to join any of their clubs or upgrade any of their clubs and you click on my link to join or upgrade, I will receive a small commission at no extra cost to you. You can find my Stamps of Life club affiliate link in the description box of this video and on my blog at lisamearsdesigns.com. And using my links is always appreciated. So starting off, I want to share with you the Stamp Club set and the Die Hard Club set for October of 2022. If you are part of the club, you get a different stamp set and die set every month, and October's set is called Wagon to Stamp. If you are a member of the Stamp Club, you will receive the Wagon to Stamp, which is a 4x6 stamp set that consists of this wagon. There are a few pumpkins and leaves and several sentiments such as Hello Pumpkin, Special Delivery, Loads of Love, Welcome, Loads of Thanks, Leaves Are Falling, Autumn is Calling, and Fall Leaves, Autumn Breeze. You can use this stamp set to make an autumn card by filling it with the pumpkins or the leaves on this stamp set, but you can also use it throughout the year, possibly putting presents in it for a birthday card or flowers for a spring card. There are other possibilities than just what you see on this stamp set. If you are a member of the Die Hard Club, you will receive the stamp set as well as the coordinating dies. And one of the perks for being a member of any of these clubs is that you will receive a 15% discount store-wide. Now let's take a look at the card kit contents for October. This card kit comes packed with so many fun goodies to make at least 12 cards. And by joining the Card Kit Club, you will also get 15% off all products in the Stamps of Life store. Now, if you are part of the Die Hard Club and Card Kit Club, you will get 20% off everything in the store. And remember, there will be a link in the description box if you want to find out more. Okay, so this card kit for October is called Always Thankful, and here is an inspiration card. Just shows you some sample cards you can make with the contents of this kit. You get a large plastic storage envelope, great for storing cardstock or the contents of your kit. You also get a pack of A2 size envelopes. There are 12 pieces of cardstock. You get the chocolate, which is the dark brown cardstock, as well as ginger snap, 2 pieces of sunshine, which is the bright yellow, 2 pieces of the poppy cardstock, 1 of the Pacific, which is the blue, a piece of mint chip, and 4 pieces of the powdered sugar, which is the white cardstock. There's also a pack of banner stickers, as well as a pack of light green bows. There are some square-shaped stickers, as well as a pack of stickers that are flower-shaped. You get 2 ribbon, 1 in a green and white gingham and 1 in an off-white color. You also get an A1 small scallop card die set. So this die set will make an A1 size card. An A1 size card measures 3.5 by 5 inches, so it's a little bit smaller than a standard A2 size card. So with this die set, you get a die to cut out the card base, and you can see it has a scalloped edge around the whole card base, and you can see that here in the die, and there's a score line right down the middle, so it will score the card base for you. You also get some layering dies. You have this die that will layer on a piece of cardstock, and then you have this die which is full of dots, and if you layer this die with the solid scalloped die, you can actually cut out a layer that has circles all over the top. There's also a third die that you can use to decorate the card fronts. You see all the 3 possibilities here, and when I make my cards with you today, you'll be able to see how I can put these together to create a card with several layers. Okay, so you also have dies to cut out pumpkins as well as leaves, and there's also a word die that says take care, and you can see what all of that looks like on the front of this packaging. And here's a look at the paper pad. This paper pad is called Always Thankful. So you can see the papers that are included in the pad. There are some banners, there are some floral prints. There are also some sheets that are of the wagon and the flowers and pumpkins, and you can use the dies to cut these out. So if you're part of the Die Hard Club, you can actually take those dies and cut these images out of the paper pad to use on your cards. Here's a sheet of pumpkins. There's also some more florals. There's some autumn leaves. And there's also another page with the wagons and the flowers and the banners. And by the way, you do get 2 of each design. So all of the colors that are in this paper pad, they match the cardstock colors that are included in this kit, as well as all of the embellishments that are included. Everything goes together. There is a word die that says Always Thankful. You get the word as well as the shadow die for both of those words. And the font is identical to the pattern paper pad. So that is what's included in the Stamps of Life Club shipments for October. If you do decide to join any of their clubs, new members will get a free stamp and die set as a welcome gift, as well as an extra promotional bonus of 500 bonus club points that you can spend in the Stamps of Life store. So if you do decide to join a club or upgrade your club membership, I thank you in advance for using my link in the description box below. So let's go ahead and get started making some cards. So I always like to start out by finding the papers in the paper pad that you can cut with your dies. So I'm pulling those out of the paper pad. There are 4 of them. So the wagon to stamp dies will die cut the wagon and the pumpkins. But if you want to die cut the flowers as well as the banners, you will need a different die set, and it's the add-on set, which I believe is called Extras for Wagon. And if you don't have them, you can always just fussy cut them out of the paper pad. So after everything is die cut, you can see all of the ephemera pieces that you have that you can use to make cards with this card kit. So you can see how the pumpkins can go in the wagon, but you also have these leaves, so you can die cut some of the leaves and you can put those in your wagon as well. That banner will fit across the length of the wagon. So the only thing that I did not die cut are the stems for the pumpkin. You can see how small they are. You could die cut them if you wanted to, just by placing the pumpkin die right over top of the stem, just like that, and then die cutting it, and then just cutting the white part off. But I chose instead to take the pumpkin die and die cut some of the ginger snap cardstock. And then what I'm going to do is just cut off the stem on the ginger snap colored pumpkin. And then I'm going to just glue that stem right on to the orange pumpkins that I die cut out of the paper pad. So you can see all of them there on the table. I'm just putting the stem between the tweezer and just putting some glue on it, and then I'm going to add it to the white part of the pumpkin. And I just think that will give you a much more clean looking pumpkin rather than trying to fussy cut out those small stems on that paper pad. So here is an up close look at what that looks like, and I do that for all of the pumpkins. Okay, so now let's get to our first card. So I have this blue pattern paper cut to 5 1/4 by 3 1/4. I'm adding that to this piece of red cardstock. Again, this is the poppy color cardstock. That red cardstock is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. So I'll add the blue pattern towards the top, and then I cut down a piece of the Always Thankful pattern paper to 5 1/4 by 1, and I'm adding that towards the bottom of that cardstock layer. Now I'm taking a piece of the off-white colored ribbon in the kit, and I'm just putting some double-sided tape on the back, And I'm going to add this ribbon where both of those pattern papers meet. I'll press that down really well, and then I'll just turn the layer over, and I'll tape the excess of that ribbon that's hanging off the edge onto the back of that cardstock panel. I'm going to add the wagon slightly above the ribbon or on top of the ribbon, and I'm going to put the flowers in the wagon, and it was going a little bit too high on that card. So what I decided to do is just use my scissors and fussy cut some of the white area along the edge of the wagon. If I remove some of that thick white border up at the top, it will allow me to have my flowers resting a little bit further down into the wagon so that they're not extending too far up at the top of this card panel. So I like the way that looks much better. So I'm going to go ahead and add my flowers to the wagon. I'm actually going to cut out a little notch here on the left and a little notch on the right side as well, so that I can hook that notch onto the wagon, so I have some of the flowers in the back of the wagon, behind the wagon, and then a few flowers on the end. They're actually showing in front, so you can kind of see that there. And then I'm just going to put some double-sided adhesive tape on the back just to keep these together, and then I'll put glue on that, and then I'll be able to add that down to the card layer. Next, I stamped out loads of thanks in black ink onto white cardstock. This sentiment came with the Wagon to stamp set. Then I just trimmed that out with my scissors, and I'm going to back it on some of this red cardstock, and then I'll just trim that down to have a red border all around. I add the sentiment to the right side of the card right below the ribbon. Next, I tied a bow using the same ribbon that I added to the card and added it off to the left, and then I added this card layer to a white A2 size card base, and that will complete this first card. Moving on to my next card, I'm going to be using the A1 die set that came in the card kit. So I die cut the die that cuts out the card base out of white cardstock, and I cut this particular die out of the mint chip cardstock, and then the next die out of the marigold cardstock. And the marigold cardstock did not come with the card kit, but it is a color that matches the paper pad, so I just took it out of my stash. So when using this die set, you can layer the solid layer, as I did in the green, on top of the card base, or you can use just the scalloped edge on top of the card base, or you can layer both the green and the orange together and then add that to the white card base. So you can see that when you add all of those layers, you actually have a different color peeking through the scalloped edge as you do on top. So you have a bottom layer color and then a top layer color. So I'm going to go ahead and add glue to the scalloped layer, and I'm going to add that to the green layer. So the orange is going to go on top of the green, and then I'll add that to the white card base. You can either start decorating your card just like this with the layers that you see, but instead I cut another piece of white cardstock to 4 by 2 7/8 that I'm going to layer on top of that orange cardstock. And I'm just inking up the edges of the white cardstock with the Ginger Snap ink, which is a very light brown ink. And you can see that when you add that extra layer to the top, it just adds for some more layers, which gives more depth to the card. So go ahead and glue that down. And now I'm taking the leaf die, and this die is the one from the Wagons to Stamp die set, and I die cut it with some of the light green or the mint chip cardstock, also some of the Ginger Snap cardstock and the Sunshine cardstock. So I have some different leaves. There are some different sizes of these leaves. There's some larger ones and smaller ones. Now that card base die set came with a set of smaller leaves, so you can also use that if you don't happen to have these dies. So I'm just inking up the edges of these leaves with the corresponding inks just to add some more depth to those leaves, and then I'm going to use these on my card. I'll arrange a few of the pumpkins in the lower right hand corner, and then I'll put some leaves around the pumpkins. And once I have all of them in place, I'll glue them down to the card front. After those images are glued down, I'm going to tie the green ribbon around the top of that card just going to tie it in a knot. Instead of tying it in a bow, I'm just going to tie it in a knot and then just snip off the edges. And then for the sentiment, I'm using the word thankful that came with the card kit, and I just die cut it in some black cardstock. I did put some double-sided adhesive tape on the back before running it through my die cut machine. It just makes it easier to stick to the card that way. And then I just went in my stash and I took some embellishments and I'm just adding a few to the front of the card, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I cut a piece of pattern paper to 3.5 by 5.5 inches, as well as a piece of white cardstock to 3 3/4 inches by 5.5 inches. And I'm layering the pattern paper onto the white cardstock just so that a little bit of the white extends on the left and right side of that pattern paper. And then I'm going to add that to a card base that I cut out of the Ginger Snap cardstock. So this is an A2 size card base cut with the Ginger Snap cardstock. It's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Then I used the Wreath to Stamp set and stamped it onto some white cardstock using the Ginger Snap ink. And I'm going to die cut that wreath using the coordinating dies. I'm going to add the wreath towards the top of the card, and then I'm going to add a pumpkin as well as some leaves surrounding the pumpkin. So I die cut the leaves out of the red, the yellow, and the light green cardstock and just adding them on the left and right side of that pumpkin. After I glue the leaves down, I do put some foam tape on the back of the pumpkin just so that it pops up a little bit and has some dimension on the card. And then I'll add it there between those sets of leaves. I stamped out the hello sentiment from the Wagon to Stamp set, cut it out with a banner die, and I'm just inking up the edges with some of the Ginger Snap ink, and then I'll add that stamp set to the wreath. I take a piece of twine from my stash and I just double it up, tie it in a bow, and then I'm going to add it to the card front. And to adhere that to the card front, I will put a little drop of glue behind the knot on the bow. You can also use a glue dot if you have one of those. And that will complete this card. For my next card, I stamped out the sentiment Hello Pumpkin with some marigold ink onto a stitched white circle. And then I have some pattern paper. This is the pumpkin pattern paper cut to 3 1/8 by 4 1/4. I'm just using the ribbon from the kit and layering it underneath that circle. I want it to go right through the center of the Hello Pumpkin words, and that stitch circle is going to be extending a little bit off of the card layer. That's why I didn't stamp the sentiment directly in the center of the circle. I stamped it a little bit more towards the top of that circle because part of that's going to be cut off. So I go ahead and tape my ribbon to the back of that card layer to adhere it to the pattern paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the circle to the card front with the bottom of that circle extending beyond that card layer, and then I'll just flip it over and trim off the bottom so that it has a straight edge. Next, I'm going to take some of my Ginger Snap ink and I'm going to ink up the edge of the pattern paper as well as the bottom part of the white circle, and then I realized I probably should have done this before gluing that circle on because I wanted to get some ink along the edges of the top part of the circle. So I'm just putting a piece of white scrap paper just underneath the circle at the top so that I don't get ink on the pumpkin pattern paper, and I go ahead and ink up the edges all around that circle. I cut a piece of white cardstock to 3 1/4 by 4 3/8, and I'm going to layer the pumpkin pattern paper on top of the white, and then I'm going to add that to a piece of brown cardstock that I cut with a scalloped rectangle die. Then I tied a bow in a piece of ribbon and then added it with a glue dot to the right hand side of this sentiment. Next, I added that entire layer to an A2 size card base that I cut with the Ginger Snap cardstock. And then finally, I'm going to add some embellishments from my stash. So this type of card design is nice to use when you want to show off the pattern paper. So you can see I was showing off that beautiful pumpkin paper, and it doesn't need any ephemera pieces or any stamps on it because that pumpkin paper along with the sentiment "Hello Pumpkin" really says everything for this card. So that's what makes this card, and I really like how this turned out. Very simple and easy to put together. For my next card, I cut a grass border out of a die from my stash, and the die that I use actually gives me two grassy borders, so I'm going to ink both of those up with the corresponding ink color just to add a little bit of depth to the card. And after I ink up the edges, I'm just going to blot on the ink on the bottom part of the grass just to get, again, to add some more dimension. So I'm going to do that to both. I also die cut a fence die out of some white cardstock. You see that there on the table. And I'm going to ink up the edges of that fence die with some ginger snap ink. So the smaller grassy border is going to go in front of the fence. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over so that I can use my double-sided tape to tape the fence directly to the border. I also cut a piece of the leaf pattern paper down to 5 1/4 by 4. And that second border, which is a little bit larger, is going to go in back of the fence. And these are going to be layered at the bottom of the pattern paper on the 5 1/4 inch side. So I go ahead and add glue to the larger grass border and add it to the bottom of the card. And then I'll flip that layer over and I'll just trim off the excess. And then I will add the smaller border with the picket fence right on top of that. And any paper that extends beyond the left and right edge, I just trim off with my scissors. And then I'll add that to a piece of the red cardstock that I cut to 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. So the wagon is going to sit there in the grass. And I'm also going to include the handle for the wagon. And notice that when you add the handle to the wagon, there's a little white gap between the handle and the bottom part of where it connects. I don't know what that's called. Anyway, I just trimmed off the white tip of the handle just to make it look a little bit more clean and connected. And you'll see once I add that handle what I'm talking about. But I go ahead and add the wagon. I go ahead and tuck the wheels behind that first layer of grass, like it's sitting in the grass. I love that. And then I go ahead and add that handle. So you see how I'm making sure that I'm connecting them so that it looks like a solid connection there. Hopefully this makes sense. But the white border from that handle die cut piece I just eliminated. So I was going to add some pumpkins or some leaves to the wagon, but I felt like the leaf background of that paper was a little bit too busy to add some pumpkins or leaves. I mean, you can see that the leaves that I'm adding they're just being drowned out by the background. You can't even barely see them. And then I felt like the pumpkins, you wouldn't be able to see that well either. So I just added the word thankful, almost like this wagon is carrying a sign. And then I added a couple of leaves on the corners. And I decided just to put the pumpkins in the grass with a few leaves as well. I'll go ahead and add this layer to an A2 size card base. It's just a white card base. And then I add a bow around the top. And that completes that card. For my next card, I cut the leaves pattern paper to 3 5/8 by 3 7/8, and I'm adding it to a piece of the ginger snap cardstock that I cut to 3 3/4 by 4 inches. I also cut the striped pattern paper to 4 1/8 by 3 3/4 inches, and I cut a piece of ginger snap cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So the striped paper is going to go at the top part of the larger ginger snap cardstock, and then that orange pattern paper is going to go at the bottom, and the orange paper is cut to 4 1/8 by 2. And then I'll add the leaves layer towards the top of the other layer, just like that. I stamped out a sentiment, "Leaves are falling, autumn is calling," with some of the marigold ink. I cut the sentiment with a stitched rectangle die and added it to a piece of ginger snap cardstock. I'm adding a piece of scrap white cardstock at the bottom of this rectangle, just because when I add it to my card front, I want to make sure that it lays flat on the card, because the top of that sentiment is going to be on the leaves paper, which has 2 extra layers of cardstock underneath it. So adding that scrap paper at the bottom of that sentiment will enable it to lay flat. I add a few of the leaves that I cut out with the die, and I'm just adding them to the bottom right hand corner, and then this is going to go on an A2 size card base. So this card design is another one that you can use when you want to let your pattern paper be the star of the show. So by just adding that leaves pattern paper and that sentiment that matches it, it really just completes this card. And as you can see for this card, I did use the Mojo Sketch 513 for inspiration. I did use some different measurements, and you can also see that for the flower on the sketch, I used the leaves on my card. For my next card, I am using the red wagon as well as the flowers, and I'm doing the same as I did with one of the previous cards by tucking the flowers into the wagon and then just adding some tape on the back to secure it. I have a piece of the blue pattern paper that measures 5 1/4 by 4. I have a piece of the dots pattern paper that's 5 1/4 by 2, and then I cut a red scallop, and I'm going to add that horizontally along the 5 1/4 inch side of that blue pattern paper. I'm going to add the polka dot paper right above my scallop piece, and then I will flip that over and I'll just snip off the excess on both the left and right side. I'll add the wagon to the left side of the card. I stamped out the sentiment "Loads of Love" on some white cardstock, and I'm just backing it up on some of the red cardstock. I'll go ahead and add that entire layer to a red piece of cardstock that's 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and then I'll put some foam on the back of the sentiment to pop it up a little bit, and I'll add that to the card. I'll add that entire layer to an A2 size white card base, and then to finish off this card, I'm going to add one of the green bows with a glue dot right to the center of the wagon. For my next card, I'm going to bring back out the A1 card base, and this time I'm going to use the dots. So if you want to die cut the dots, you need to layer together the dots die inside of the open scallop die that you see there laying on the table. I'm taking a piece of the blue cardstock and just putting some double-sided adhesive tape on the back just so that I can make this entire sheet a sticker. It'll be easier than applying glue to this sheet when I'm finished. So I'll go ahead and layer these two dies onto the blue cardstock. I will tape it down to make sure that it does not move, and then I'll run this through my die cutting machine. So you can see all the dots on that paper, but all of those dots will come out once I remove the backing, and then once I weed out all of those dots using my brush. So I'll go ahead and finish this up off camera, and then what I'm going to do is I want to have some yellow showing through the back, so I took that same solid scallop die cut a piece of that yellow cardstock, and now I'm just layering the blue dots on top of the yellow. So lots of different options with this A1 die. So if you want to have the dots, you can, but you don't have to. You can just have a solid background. Okay, so next I'm taking that scallop die and just die cutting the bottom edge of the die, right where it meets that first indentation where the first and second scallop meet on the left and right sides. It's only about a 1/2 inch from the bottom of that die. And I die cut the green cardstock, and I'm just inking up the edges with some of the corresponding ink color. So I want this to represent the ground, which would obviously then be the grass, because I'm just going to make a little scene on this card. So after I ink up the edges, I'm going to glue this piece of green cardstock to the bottom of my card layer. Next, I'm going to take some cloud dies that I have in my stash, and I'm going to add some clouds so that it looks like there's a little sky on this card. My clouds will go off the top edge of the card layer, and then once I glue them down, I'll flip this over, and I'll just take some scissors and trim off the edges. And then I'm going to keep one of them, and I'm going to add it back to the top of the card, just so that I have 3 clouds in the sky. And because I don't have a lot of room to work with on this smaller card base, I am just using my scissors and just trimming off some of this extra white all around the edge of my wagon. Then I'll go ahead and glue my wagon to the center of the card. And then I'm going to take the flower stickers that came with the card kit, and I am going to add them to the wagon. So it looks like there are flowers in my wagon. I added some double-sided adhesive foam to the back of the sentiment, which I used the special delivery sentiment from the stamp set, and I added that to the center of the wagon. My card base is cut with the red cardstock to match the wagon. I'm going to go ahead and add the dotted card layer to the front of that card base. And to finish this up, I'm going to take my Scrapbook.com white pops of color, and I'm going to add a drop of them to the centers of these flowers to make them look a little bit more like flowers. And after doing this, I will let this card dry flat, and it will need to dry for a little while, and then those centers will dry hard. So that completes this card. For my next card, I'm going to be using the A1 card die set as well. So the background layer is in the red, the top layer is in white, so you can see the red through all of those scallops. I'm going to take 2 sets of the flowers and layer them to fill the front of this card. So I'm going to start one on the right, flush with the straight edge. You can see how it's curving up a little bit because I want to have more depth to my flowers, and then the other one is going to start at the very right. So the flowers span from the left to the right edge. And then I die cut the words "Take Care." Now the words "Take Care" come with this die set. And I did the shadow layer out of the red and then the words out of the white cardstock, so that really pops. And then I'm adding one of the light green bows to the top right hand corner. And to bring out some of the yellow in those flowers, I'm going to go in my stash and bring out some yellow epoxy dots and add those to the front of the card. And that will complete this card. For my next card, I have a piece of the striped paper that measures 1/2 inch by 5 1/4, and then the brown floral pattern paper that measures 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm adding both of those onto a piece of the brown cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So the stripe goes off to the very left-hand side. You see a little bit of the brown peeking around all of those edges. And I'm going to be making a shaker card, so I have this white framed scallop circle that I added to a piece of acetate, and then I'm just going to use my scissors to trim off the excess acetate that extends beyond the circle. So when I cut that scalloped circle out of the white, it also gives you a piece for the inside. So I die cut it again in brown, and I was going to use that inside piece to layer on the bottom of the shaker. But then after I added it to my card, I realized that I needed to have a bigger brown circle so that the pattern paper does not show underneath once that scalloped white circle is raised. So I removed that initial one and I die cut a solid brown circle just using a regular circle die, and I added that to my card. This one's just slightly bigger than the other one. So once I have it in place, I can go ahead and add some leaves. These are the small leaves that come with the A1 card die set, and I die cut them in the same colors that are in that striped pattern paper. So I have some blues, yellows, and greens. I didn't do any of the browns because you wouldn't be able to see them as well against the brown cardstock layer, that brown circle. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a foam strip right along the edge of my scalloped white circle. Make sure that when you add the foam piece that it connects from one side to the other side and there's no gaps in between. The piece that I had a little gap there, but I went ahead and just took another piece of my foam strip and I just added a small piece to connect it because you want to make sure everything's closed up so none of the shaker pieces fall out. Alright, so after removing the backing of the foam, I go ahead and add the acetate piece to the top, and then I realized there are not enough leaves in my shaker. I wanted to fill this up. So I went ahead and die cut some more leaves, and this time I also included orange. I don't know why I didn't do that earlier because orange is in that striped pattern paper, so it brings out some of the orange in it. And now I'm just going to add some glue to the back of the foam. You don't have to add the glue. I'm just adding it because I want to make sure I get a really good, secure stick to my card. I don't want anything coming apart. So I just press that down really well, and it looks so much better with all of those leaves in there. I'm really glad I added more. I'm going to add a couple of the pumpkins to the lower right hand corner. And then I'm going to add the sentiment thankful to the front of my circle. Now for the sentiment, I die cut the word thankful out of white and out of orange cardstock. And I'm just going to offset the two just so that I can see a little bit of the orange peeking underneath. So you can see I'm just offsetting it there, and you can see a little bit of the orange underneath the white on the top. And then I'm going to add glue to that and add it to the center of my shaker piece. Next, I'm going to go in my stash and grab some twine, wrap it around the edge of my card where both of those pieces of pattern paper meet, and then I'm going to tie that twine in a bow. Then I'm going to flip this layer over, and I'm going to trim the center part of that twine off of that card. I'm just taping down with some double-sided tape the ends and taking the middle part away because I don't want to have so much bulk underneath this layer when I add it to an A2 size card base. So I'm going to go ahead and add glue to this now and add it to that white A2 size card base. And then the last thing I'm going to do for this card is to add a green leaf to the center of the bow. And that completes my shaker card. So I hope you like the cards that I made today using the Stamps of Life October card kit. I would love to hear which card was your favorite. Leave me a comment down below and let me know. And once again, if you're interested in joining a Stamps of Life club, I always appreciate your support by using my affiliate link in the description box below. And be sure to check out my coordinating blog post at lisamearsdesigns.com for up-close pictures and card measurements. Lastly, don't forget to click that like button and click that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications so that you'll be notified every time I release a new video. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.